We're going to just pivot now to one of the hot topics of
Yep.
right now, which is Ukraine. Summit President Trump has had a summit with President Putin. I mean, you've met President Putin in the early 2000s and Lavrov. I mean, what do you think their strategy might be going into the meeting and then coming out of it? How do you think it's going to, where do you think things are headed? Would a
Well,
deal be done or?
we've already seen their strategy. This for the Russians, for Putin and Lavrov, but Putin's the man that matters in that system. Um, they've already got some big wins from this. The fact that it's the first time I think that Putin has met Trump face to face, or met any president face to face for 6 years. Okay, on US territory, but in Alaska, which of course famously was sold by the Russians to the Americans, and the Russians have been making use of that to say, well, what it just shows you can, you know, sell territory over the heads of those who are living there, and so on. Um, uh, and it puts Putin on the world stage. And the fact that Sergei Lavrov has turned up at the meeting today wearing a T-shirt blazoned in with saying Cyrillic script CCCP, which was the United Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, illustrates their sense that they've, quotes, won. Plus the fact that, sadly, certainly from my perspective, the Russians have been making military gains in the front in the Donbass. I hope, but how do I know, that President Trump is not taken in by this and um, accepts that this summit has to be about working out parameters of a settlement, but cannot be that involve a settlement itself, which can't take place and could never, in any circumstances, without the involvement of the other key party to this terrible military conflict, were namely the Ukrainians. So I think that's where we are, but also without involving the Europeans, because if if a sort of deal is done behind, as it were, the backs of the Ukrainians and to a degree behind the backs of the Europeans, it wouldn't hold anyway, and could lead to great instability.
Just on that point, the British government yesterday, Sir Keir hosted the President Zelensky.
Yeah,
Where do you, and there was a call also with President Trump, with the Europeans and the British Prime Minister.
yeah.
I mean, where do you think the British government's head is at on this? What are the Europeans looking to see come out of any deal between
Well, I mean, the
Russia?
Europeans will not, including the UK, will not want a deal unless it has been willingly accepted by Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. I mean, that is absolutely clear. Um, and the Ukrainians are very worried indeed, as you know from all the news reports, that something may be decided over their heads. Moreover, this is an irony, really, but a consequence of President Trump, in a sense, quite rightly telling the Europeans that A, they had to pay more towards the total costs of NATO, but B, they needed to pay more and the US correspondingly less towards armaments and other material to the Ukrainians has actually been to strengthen the hand of the Europeans, not least including the UK.
That makes perfect sense. In terms of, if this doesn't work, Senator Lindsey Graham has a sanctions bill here in the United States, and there's a lot of talk from the more, conservative Republicans that we just need to move forward and impose this sanctions bill. Do you think the U.S. sanctions bill, or that would go after China and India for buying Russian oil, do you think that could have an impact if we don't see any progress here in with Putin?
Yes, I mean, I think but we also need to go after Russia a bit more. And one of President Trump and his advisors will have to be weighing in the balance is that you don't want gratuitously to outrage China and India unless it's going to have a serious effect on the Russians, because um, India was becoming quite a Western ally, and is India, which I know well, is not not remotely a one-party state. It's got a very dominant prime minister at the moment in Narendra Modi, but he's been elected fair and square, and uh, they have a federal structure not dissimilar from that of the United States. Um, Different parties running different states within the union in India. Um, and it's my view, it's strategically very important for the US to keep India on board. On China, yes, of course, there's great power rivalry between the US and China, but at the same time, China really remains very important to the US in all sorts of respects, and to US consumers. Whereas Russia, I mean, when was the last time you bought anything made in Russia, Mark?
Never, never.
Well, never exactly. I mean, unless you're addicted to caviar, it's unlikely. I mean, literally, unlikely you ever see or taste or experience anything made in Russia. I mean, the Russian economy is relatively small. Okay, then they spent an awful lot of money on defense, which is why they're such a threat in a country like Ukraine. But targeting uh, Russia directly seems to me to be the key thing. And if you so if I was discussing this with Senator Graham, I'd want to know what the consequences were going to be of this, and were these sanctions really going to help hurt the Russians? Because if they don't, they're not. Then I might not go down that route.
Do you think the UK government should be imposing more sanctions on the Russians? I know London over the years has been notorious as a second home for oligarchs and
Well,
Russian.
I think the I mean that it's much tighter now,
Mhm.
much tighter. And if you look at the way that control over the banking sector has tightened, I mean it's very. I mean, even just for ordinary transactions, it's really noticeable how much tighter that is. Yeah.
Do you foresee a future for Ukraine in NATO? Because President Trump has said he may give a US security guarantee as part of a ceasefire, but he wouldn't make that commitment if the effort is not part of NATO. Do you see? I mean, do you foresee Ukraine
I mean,
becoming a NATO member?
in time, yes, but it's you've got to be really careful, clear about what you're taking on if you give a security guarantee, which is you are agreeing in treaty terms that if country X to whom you're giving this guarantee is attacked, then you will come to its aid. I mean, it's just worth bearing in mind that the First World War would not have happened unless the um, Austria had been given security guarantees by Germany, um, and in turn, France and Russia had given each other security guarantees. The United Kingdom had given Belgium security guarantees, and security guarantees are only worthwhile uh, if they are going to be used in extremis. So uh, I'm, I really want to see Ukraine have a better future brought within the Western fold. Certainly, steps taken to give them strong status, associate status within the European Union, and so on. But for everybody, we've got to think really hard about what it is we're taking on, because it's a big insurance premium you're paying
Mhm.
for a security guarantee.
President Bush said he looked into his eyes and he saw, his soul. Senator John McCain saw a K, a G, and a B. I know Prime Minister Blair had at the time had great expectations for dealing with Putin, but things have changed since the early 2000s. How have you seen Vladimir Putin evolve, and what's your perspective
Well,
on
I
his?
mean, we went to great lengths in the early 2000s to try and get alongside. Russia, not to humiliate them after what had happened at the beginning of the 90s. Um, and indeed, though this was after the arguments in the Security Council over Iraq. So I think that in the summer of 2003, there was an official state visit by President Putin to the United Kingdom. So it's the highest level of recognition for a state. Um, but that was 22 years ago. And in the intervening period, Russia has become much more autocratic. Um, uh, Opposition has been almost literally snuffed out. Um, I think Putin sees himself, without any question, as a latter day emperor of Russia. Not because he's Joe Stalin eschewed any involvement with the Orthodox Church. Um, Putin has been embracing it as a means, not least of bolstering his own position. So uh, I think the second senator you quoted, it was hit the nail on the head. But yeah, we were to a degree all taken in by this. I mean, my reaction wasn't that different from President Bush's at the beginning of the 2000s. And we did have cooperation from Russia on a lot of issues, but you could feel this sense of humiliation. I mean, after all, they lost half their population when the Soviet Union collapsed. But that's not your fault or my fault. Uh, all of us have been saying to the Russians, you can't carry on running a great big territory in this way. You've got to give individual uh, states within the Federation of Russia or the Soviet Union far greater autonomy. You've got to allow real democracy to break out, the sort of thing you've got in the US. Uh, but they didn't do it, so the whole thing collapsed.
Well, Foreign Secretary, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time. To learn more about Compass Global, please go to www.compassglobalcomms.com. And Foreign Secretary, once again, we're honored to have you as a guest, sir.
Thank you very much indeed.